Collectathon platformers. These games were pretty much all the rage back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Big open levels with tons to do in order to get goodies. Using said goodies to unlock more levels, unlock new abilities, beat a bunch of bosses, and finally you encounter the big asshole who wound you up into this mess the whole time. The genre was kickstarted with Super Mario 64. A revolutionary game, no doubt, but it suffers from a few problems that date the game to hell and back. But collectathons would see their true rise to success with Rare's own Banjo-Kazooie. While not a perfect game, it's more refined than Mario 64 and introduced a lot of common collectathon tropes and is regarded as a classic. Collectathons would continue to evolve further with games like the Spyro the Dragon trilogy, Jak and Daxter, and Super Mario Sunshine. But one game was forgot about and left in the dust. One that was essential for console owners back in the day. A licensed game based on an extremely popular cartoon starring a talking sponge. SpongeBob Squarepants Battle for Bikini Bottom. This game was released on October 31st, 2003 in the United States and November 28th, 2003 in Europe. Like the aforementioned games, this was a collectathon platformer for the PlayStation 2, Nintendo GameCube, and the Xbox. While critics gave it favorable reviews, gamers and SpongeBob fans alike seemed to absolutely adore this game back in its prime. I'm not going to waste any more of your time, so I'll just get on with the story. Sheldon J. Plankton, the antagonist of the show, is trying to make an army of robot minions of all shapes and sizes to try to
finally steal the Krabby Patty formula.
This goes terribly wrong, however, as he forgets to flip the switch to obey mode. Because he definitely needed to make a don't obey mode. As a result of this, the robots turn against Plankton and kick him out of the chum bucket, and then they begin to turn the place into the robot's HQ. That same night, SpongeBob and Patrick are playing a nice game of robots and racehorses. Patrick then brings up his magic wishing shell and explains to SpongeBob that if he puts the toy robot in the shell, says the magic words, and shakes it, they'll have real robots to play with by morning. They then perform the ritual. SpongeBob wakes up the next morning and his living room is a complete mess.
Gonna play with robots, gonna play with robots, gonna play with robots, gonna play with... Wow! Gary, did you do that?
Obviously the robots did this, and after the tutorial, SpongeBob walks over to Plankton, who then guilt trips SpongeBob into collecting golden spatulas to help Plankton get back into the chum bucket.
They even bent all my spoons. I love those spoons like they were my children.
That's terrible.
Oh, won't you help me stop them? Before they bend all my forks?
Not the forks!
SpongeBob is convinced that he and Patrick are responsible for the robots, so it's up to those two, oh yeah, and Sandy, to clean up their mess and save Bikini Bottom. As you can tell, golden spatulas are the main collectible of the game. They're basically jiggies in Banjo-Kazooie. You obtain these by completing missions given to you by different NPCs throughout the levels. Whether it be defeating a bunch of robots, a race down a slide, completing a puzzle, you name it. Other collectibles include shiny objects, a currency used to feed clams to open locked areas or be given to Mr. Krabs in exchange for a golden spatula, socks, which are meant to be given to Patrick in groups of 10 for a spatula, and level-specific collectibles. These are basically a fetch quest. You grab a certain number of a thing and bring it back to a specific character for a spatula. This adds more variety to the game and makes certain levels feel more unique. Speaking of levels, let's talk about the level design. While the levels are big and open, there's always a clear path to the next segment of the level. This is good because it allows new players to linearly explore levels, while other stuff is a word to those who like to explore. You can only play as two characters in a level, with the first being SpongeBob and the second character being either Patrick or Sandy. The levels are designed to take advantage of the two characters you're given, and it's a blast to explore them. Speaking of which, let's talk about the playable characters. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy for some reason are at your disposal in this game. They each have their own special traits and abilities, but aren't too different to end up annoying the player when they have to switch. SpongeBob has various bubble attacks like a vertical bash move, a ground pound, and can unlock the bubble bowl and a fucking guided missile called the cruise bubble. Patrick is definitely meant to be the tough guy of the trio. His ground pound can stun certain enemies so he can pick them up and throw them. Picking shit up is definitely Patrick's main trait. He can pick up tikis, stunned robots, watermelons, and ice cubes that can freeze the water. And lastly, there's Sandy. Her main trait is her signature lasso. She can lasso enemies for a quick kill, glide for a few seconds for more airtime, and swing on aerial hooks. Sandy is definitely my favorite, and her sections are some of the most memorable parts of the game for me. Now every game has its flaws, so let's talk about the low points of this game. First off, the boss battles. Not terrible, but they have two glaring problems. They're too easy, and they drag on forever. Dude, bosses take 9 hits, but the fights can last nearly 6 minutes. It doesn't sound that long, but it's still only 9 hits. You'd think the boss is constantly throwing attacks at you that are difficult to dodge, but no, they're slow and their attacks are pathetic. You can stand around and wait for an opening if you really want to. The exception of this is the final boss, but that's at the very end of the game, so you have to fight these 2 idiots to get to that point. Each set of 3 levels also contains a mini-boss in one of them. In Jellyfish Fields, you fight King Jellyfish, in the Graveyard, you fight the Flying Dutchman, and the Marmalair has Merryman's arch-rival, a classic character from the show, and one that will make any fan squeal with excitement. It's... Prawn?
Did someone call?
Yeah, this guy named Prawn is the mini-boss in the Marmalair. I've never seen him in the show, so I rewatched all the Merryman and Barnacle Boy episodes, and not once does he even appear at all. After some research, Prawn was apparently made specifically for this game, so you couldn't have used other more recognizable Merryman and Barnacle Boy villains, like the ones Merryman brings up in the cutscene before the prawn fight?
Man Ray! The atomic flounder! The dirty bubble!
Another flaw is that there's plenty of design oversights regarding certain challenges. Take this part in Groot Lagoon for example, where you have to get to the top of the giant sandcastle before the water kills you. At the beginning, there's a bouncer to get you to the next platform, but you can use that same bouncer to skip half the segment. Another one in Groot Lagoon is the first mission you receive. Larry the Lobster asks you to shine sun rays onto a robot who's hoarding all the sunscreen, but 2/3 into the game you unlock the cruise bubble.
Congratulations, SpongeBob! You're king of the beach!
Not to mention that this is a very buggy game. It rarely affects casual playthroughs, but breaking this game into pieces is a lot of fun. Take for example this part in the skee-ball machine where... But this means that speedrunning the game is a treasure trove of endless possibilities. I highly recommend watching runners like Conquer Hacks, Curse the Fast, and Shift. Their streams are great entertainment even if you're not all that familiar with this game. Let's talk about the soundtrack of this game. The composer is James Levine, I think, whom I have never heard of before researching this topic. Surprisingly, he's actually composed music for some popular TV shows like American Horror Story and Glee. The music in this game is fantastic and fits each level very well. Each song has its own atmosphere, from the bustling streets of downtown the campy superhero theme of the Marmalair, to the creepy minor scale pirate folk tune in the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard. Music is a pretty interesting topic of discussion due to how it was handled. The master tracks were recorded in stereo but compressed down to mono in order to fit on the weak-ass PlayStation 2. Although they stayed that way on GameCube and Xbox, the stereo renditions of most of the soundtrack can be found in another SpongeBob game, Truth or Square, which was also developed by Heavy Iron Studios, which is what you're hearing in this video. Voice acting is another topic I'd like to discuss. Most of the TV cast returns and their performances are top-notch, but some of the actors aren't present and are replaced. Clancy Brown as Mr. Krabs and Ernest Borgnine as Merman aren't present, so they're both replaced by Joe White. I like to call these two characters Bootleg Man and Crabborg because they don't exactly sound like their TV counterparts.
For heaven's sake, boy, cover your ears.
You're not Mr. Krabs.
You know, it's kind of weird to be talking about graphics last, isn't it? This is where the main differences between consoles start to show. PS2 and GameCube look similar to my eye, but the Xbox version is by far the best. Bloom effects, higher quality textures, and shorter load times than PS2 and GameCube. My final verdict? This is one of the best 3D platformers out there. Tight controls, well-designed levels, likable characters, large replay value, and a great soundtrack. No bias, this is my favorite game of all time. So what happened? Why was this game forgotten about by the gaming community, and shrugged off as a mediocre license game by people like Aaron, I'm too lazy to animate so I'll make fun of Sonic for a living, Hansen?
Why did people want us to play this?
I don't know, dude.
This is not interesting.
I don't think
Well, for one, ever since the SpongeBob Squarepants movie back in 2004, the show has fallen from grace, mainly being targeted at young children as opposed to general audiences in the first 3 seasons in the first movie. People just see SpongeBob as that funny children's show with lots of memes nowadays, and Nickelodeon's marketing and social media enforces this belief. Not to mention that the mid-2000s and beyond is home to a lot of mediocre licensed games, whose main goal was to bank off the success of the source material and rip off parents with budget games based on IPs children like. Some examples are Aquaman Battle for Atlantis, The Simpsons Skateboarding, Activision's Ghostbusters, and Godzilla. And SpongeBob games proceeded to take a nosedive in quality after Battle for Bikini Bottom. Games like Plankton's Robotic Revenge, SpongeBob Hero Pants, and Surf and Skate Road Trip are some examples. But then, on that fateful day,
Are ya ready, kids?
An indie developer by the name of Purple Lamp Studios was making a remake of Battle for Bikini Bottom entitled Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. I would have been very happy with an HD port, but this is a full-on remake. The game is set to release in just a few days, and I really cannot wait. I'll be live streaming the game on launch day at 8 a.m. Okay, last minute edit. Apparently the game's launching in the afternoon in my time zone, so I'm not going to be able to stream it at this time. So the stream's going to start at 1 p.m. instead of 8 a.m.